It's a result of the good work that we've done between the council, the police and communities and community organisations over many years to actually keep the good relations between people from different communities. I'd like now to invite, to talk about the relationship with the community and with the Pakistan Muslims, I'd like to invite Chief Inspector Simon Worrell from South Yorkshire Police.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thanks for inviting me here tonight. I suppose the answer to the question, or the question we start with really, is the one that was asked on national television by Nick Clegg, MP for Sheffield, Sheffield Hallam, and Deputy Prime Minister. And he said, why not Sheffield? Is it just luck? Was it just luck that didn't happen here? And I'm pretty sure that luck played a part in it. Thank goodness. But I don't think it is entirely down to luck. I think that we have to go a long way back into the history of Sheffield before we get to any answers about why things are better in Sheffield than they may be in other communities. I think if you go back into the long history of Sheffield, there's been almost, as far as anyone can remember, a very diverse and tolerant community around the steelworks and other places where people work together. And there was always an understanding between different races, religions, and just communities from within Sheffield itself. I mean, Sheffield is known as a sort of a conglomeration of villages, really, compared to other cities. I'm not a local boy, you might have noticed by the accent, but I'm struck, having worked in Sheffield now for about 8 years, how well the community does come together and the tolerance and understanding that you see, not just from the reaction to the police and how we police in Sheffield, but just in understanding and tolerating difference within the city. So I think that's where we start from. I suppose the second part of this is usually, and these riots were no exception, there is some kind of trigger incident between the community and the police that kick these things off. I think the difference with these riots was very much around, whilst it started with a trigger incident of Mr. Duggan being shot by the police, and that will be investigated, I'm sure in due course we'll come to understand more about that. Whilst that was the start of it, I think that the deplorable aspect of these riots was actually most of it was never about any grievances within the communities. And I think that was well understood in Sheffield and in other places, I hasten to add, that it really wasn't, it was about greed rather than grievance. And I think that was clearly felt across this community. We just felt the whole thing was distinctly unfair. So that's the first thing, is I would say, congratulations to the community for understanding the difference and knowing that what was happening in London and in Liverpool and in other smaller towns like the Medway towns where I'm from, that people it was just greed that was fueling that. There was no real understanding of any issues around what had gone on with Duggan or other issues within that community. Where we've seen riots in Bradford and Brixton and other places which have been broadly down to race, there has been some genuine and real grievances there, but I feel that this time it's been different, and that's a big difference in Sheffield. So moving on then to sort of the engagement between the police and communities in Sheffield, we work extremely hard with the police and the council and others to understand the communities that we serve. We are here and we police in Britain by consent, and that actually drives, and that's a significant factor in everything we do. So we have to have the consent of our communities, and to get the consent from our communities, we need to understand what the communities want and what the needs of different communities are. And sometimes that's not very easy. Some people don't really want to talk to the police. And we've had a long and lively, over the years, discussion and debate with the Pakistani community, as we have had with the Somali community and other communities within Sheffield. But then therein lies one of the difficulties is there is no such thing in my view as the Pakistani community or the Muslim community, because if you're Pakistani and you live in Darnall, you'll have a potentially different view to a Pakistani man who lives in Burngreave or in Broomhill or other places. So some of this is around geography and some of it's around race, religion and other things, but we are all different, so we've all got different needs. So I sometimes flinch a bit when people talk about, well, what do the Pakistani community think? Because you've all got different views. So we need to understand that, and we need to make sure that that feeds what we do. So over the years, and we still, and it continues now, we spend quite a lot of time and effort, and rightly so, understanding the needs of the communities, coming to meetings like this. My good friend and colleague, Deb Leonard, down the front here, works full-time talking to people within the community about the needs and making sure that the police understand what's going on within the various different communities. But there's no real ground for complacency here between with the police or with the community, because we've seen in the past where the police think they know what people want, and community leaders often think they know what their community, and we feel the community leaders might feel they're representing the community, but actually we find that in Bradford and other places that's not always been the case. But I'm pretty confident that when we ask for help and tolerance from our community, and we go to our key individual networks, as we call it, the people that we talk to within the community, as we did when the riots started in London. We started to talk to people, say to people, you know, what's going on, how are people feeling, what's the feeling amongst Pakistanis in the community, what's the feeling amongst Somalis, etc. We were getting good and accurate information, and that's the critical thing, that people actually feed very quickly what sometimes would have seemed to them as fairly insignificant matters. But we did find, particularly this time, that we had really, really good information coming in from all across the community, from young people, from older people, from Somalis, from Pakistanis, and we were able, I wouldn't say the whole thing went completely smoothly, but we were able to understand what was going on and deploy police resources to stop what was essentially a few idiots trying to start trouble in Sheffield. And it was literally that, just a few idiots. The great thing about Sheffield as well is I think there's a huge element. The police is just one element of policing. There is a huge element across the whole range of communities here in Sheffield of self-policing. So understanding what's going on and actually, you know, influencing within whichever community it is that you live, influencing what goes on there, and taking a stand and making sure that people are absolutely clear that behaviour like that won't be tolerated in Sheffield. I touched on it earlier, are we complacent? We can't be. We know we've got problems to some degree with violence in Sheffield. We know we've got some, not huge, but some problems with gangs in Sheffield, and some of those individuals are no longer easy to reach, either by the police or from the community. So I'd ask you all to just make sure you're aware that sometimes it's not actually all that easy to reach everyone in the community. And I'd ask you, as well as us, not to get complacent about these things. Be happy and delighted with the fact that things didn't happen in Sheffield that happened elsewhere, but just make sure that we continue to work together day in, day out. This isn't something that we can turn on. You know, on a Monday a riot happens, and on a Tuesday we start talking to the community. It's not possible. That will not work. It's years and years of work that have gone into developing a relationship between the police and all the communities of Sheffield, and that's something that I'd like to thank you all for. Thank you very much.